We've made really good.
Wait. Now you can go.
Okay. Any other formalities we need to go through to start?
No, I mean, we'll call to order 6:05 p.m. I got the agenda in front of me. I don't know if we want to blow through the first few things just so we can get to the meat of the meeting. Are there any new members to introduce right now? I don't think so.
Bob says no.
Okay. Do we, can I have a motion to approve previous meeting minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those against? Okay, the ayes have it. Okay, correspondence, schematic designs. Louis, I'll let you take over for this one, the stage 3 schematic design.
Okay, thank you. So we've made some really good progress. We've been out to the building a few times, different consultants, and as a team. Steve and both Steves and Collier's, and Downs have been very helpful in doing the investigations. They open up some holes for us to inspect the structure and the ductwork above. So that has been very helpful. We're in good shape. We're ready to submit schematic design. The last thing that we needed to do that is to meet with you tonight, present some of the specifics on the project, and then get an approval from you to submit the schematic design. So we wanted to have a detailed review of what's included in the schematics. Of course, the main thing is the mechanical upgrades. And for that, we have our engineer, Will Mayer from EDS, who's going to take you through that scope of work.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
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 All right. So in general, what we're trying to do is replace basically all of the rooftop equipment. A lot of that is currently in failure or has already failed. So we're replacing everything on the roof in terms of ventilation units and AC units for the core area of the building, the auditorium, the guidance offices, and the library, as well as the heating and ventilating units that serve the classroom wings and provide ventilation for those wings. So that's the majority of the work. In addition to that, we're looking to replace problematic equipment within the building. Most of that problematic equipment is unit ventilators, so we're replacing that type of equipment. Some areas that we're not, and I don't know, do we want to talk about the areas that we're not touching right now, Louis?
Yeah, I think that's really important so that it's clear what's involved and what is not.
Right. So, we did a fairly extensive review of all the equipment a few years ago. And, there's a lot of equipment inside the building that is in good working order. For example, the H&B units in the gyms and the locker room areas. So we're not planning on touching that. That could be added as an add alternate if we needed to. We're not replacing the boilers at this point. There's no problems with the boilers. The boilers are 30 or 40-year machines. They're Cleaver Brooks, very robust equipment. And I think as long as they're maintained, we can probably get another 15 or 20 years out of those pieces of equipment. So we're not planning on replacing that. We are replacing water heater in the mechanical room, since that's been problematic. Basically, so we've just gone through, and what we're trying to do is replace everything above the roof, as well as any interior items that have been problematic for the school and that have been failing. So in general, that's the idea. The rooftop equipment, we're replacing straight HMV units, which by HMV, I mean heating and ventilating. So they draw in outside air and they heat it using the hot water from the boilers. And then that air is exhausted out of the building. What we're replacing that with is energy recovery ventilators. So that type of equipment actually recovers the energy from the exhaust air and transmits it to the fresh air, saving hopefully about 60%, 60 to 70% of your operational cost for heating that outside air. So at the end of the day, you'll have new equipment and your operational costs should be reduced substantially. That's kind of it in general. If there's any specific questions, I can certainly address them.
I have just a couple of things that might be good to highlight. First, how does this address the current situation with COVID? How it will function, any enhancements? The other thing is I would mention that we're leaving the baseboard heating, which is in good place, intact. And then if maybe you could talk a little bit about the controls.
Okay. So in terms of COVID, and in terms of the amount of fresh air that's currently being brought into the building is actually in good shape in terms of the amount of fresh air that's currently being brought in with the existing system. So we would be bringing in at least as much, if not more, fresh air through the energy recovery ventilators. We can also add to those, MERV 13 filters in order to help filter the air, as well as, some UV and or bipolar ionization within those units to help disinfect the air a little bit. In terms of the baseboard,
What's going on, Uncle Lou?
you see
A
Travis?
bomber.
That was Travis.
Oh,
Hey, Uncle Lou.
So,
Miss you guys.
yeah, and then the baseboard heat, as you said, it's in good condition. We're gonna keep that for the most part. We don't really see any reason to mess with that. We are going to replace the controls on that so that they are integrated with building management system, and we will be upgrading building management for all of the newer units to integrate with a DDC control system, which will allow external interface and remote interface from your phone, from your laptop, from your iPad, that sort of thing. So in terms of controls, the majority will be upgraded. Anything that's existing to remain will be tied into that control system.
Question for you.
Yep.
You said we can filter, we can put the UV light. Is that in the scope or not in the scope?
It's kind of open for discussion. Usually there's a pretty lengthy discussion regarding that and the costs associated and the benefits associated with it. So that's why I say we can. Honestly, if we want to get into that discussion now, we can certainly do that. I think with an energy recovery ventilator where you're bringing in 100% outside air, the benefit of additional filtration is really kind of lost. The filtration is really better implemented in recirculation type equipment. but there is a slight benefit to ionization systems because the ionized particles actually, the ions travel down the ductwork and into the space and can theoretically do some good in that way. So we'd have to talk about the various options, I guess, and understand what everyone's comfortable with, because obviously applying them across the entire school could be a fairly costly endeavor, and we want to make sure that everybody's on board with the measures that we're taking and they understand what each measure brings to the table.
And if I could just point out, so when Will mentions that it's a lengthy discussion, it's a lengthy discussion that we have been involved and engaged with other districts who are not doing the level of renovation to their mechanical systems that you are. At the end of the day, they opted not to introduce the enhancements that we had studied. So, Will, can I ask you though, and this may be something you need to talk, what did the stage 2 approval include as far as COVID enhancements?
I think the stage 2 approval, the basis of design that we submitted, talked about COVID enhancements and what the various enhancements were, but I don't think we, we listed all of the various enhancements, but I don't think we focused on which ones were going to be incorporated. Because
okay, I'm going to ask you if you could just check into that, and while you do that, maybe if Dave O'Day, our structural engineer, whose team have been up on the roof, have investigated to great detail the existing structure and what we need to do to it. So if we could have Dave address the structural analysis that has been included.
Hey, good evening, guys. We started by trying to find where the units were from underneath. We found that we have hard ceilings and we couldn't see them. So we asked Louis to see if he can find some existing drawings that can help us. But we didn't get them on time. So we went up to the roof and started to investigate the existing dunnage on top of the roof where the existing RTUs are sitting on. We found that there were 7 of them, and those sit on steel beams with 4 legs going through the roof onto the existing structure, which is in between the roof and the ceiling, which we couldn't see. So we, in fact, we had a drone of ours that we flew around, so we don't have to go up and down the peaks of the roof. And we did gather all the information, and we do have it reflected on 3-dimensionally on a set of drawings, which Louis's office has, and I think they passed it on to you. So those 7 dunnage, steel dunnage, the only missing link was what are those legs sitting on? So fortunately, a couple of days ago, we were given the existing as-built structurals. So although we couldn't see what's there, but because our independent investigation of the steel dunnage above the roof was identical to what was shown on the drawings that were given to us afterwards, we have great deal of comfort that the existing supporting system for the RTUs were built per the original drawings. Now, in fact, I in person studied all the roof structure where those steel legs sit on, and I did check them out. And the good news, the very good news, is that we don't have to do anything. Everything works with the new RTUs. Nothing. We don't have to do anything. And it just to let you know, and of course, Louis knows that in similar situations where we are asked to look at RTU support systems where the system was built, 15, 20 years ago or more. And we often find that what they have in place doesn't work. And we typically recommend new dunnage where the RTUs sit on, is just to let you know that the average cost of each dunnage, and we have 7 of those, would be $25,000 per RTU. And in this case, we saved all that. We don't have to do a thing.
Thank you, Dave. That is great news. And so Dave mentioned that we didn't have the structural drawings till recently, and that's why these explorations that Downs helped us and Steve helped us with to cut holes into the gypsum ceiling to look what's above. I also want to mention that not knowing any of this at the stage 2 schematic, an allowance was carried for possible structural steel reinforcement. So that's really good news to the overall project. And it is why what Will said is important, that although we're not including some of these system replacements in the gymnasium of locker rooms, those may be considered as alternates. What we want to do is get back the cost estimate, see where we are, and if we can include those as alternates for the committee to evaluate in the future, we would recommend doing that. Will, I don't know if you at this time want to add anything.
No, I think I'm good unless anybody has any questions. I'm here to answer any questions.
Any additional information on the cost estimates that were carried for COVID?
No, I looked through it. I didn't see anything specific on the plans, but as I said, in the basis of design, it's in there. All of the different measures are in there. We'd have to check with the cost estimates and see what was actually carried.
Okay, so we can.
I just have one thing on the filters, the MERV 13 filters. I've been asked, I couldn't tell you how many times by staff.
Yeah.
If we have MERV 13 filters, and we don't, we have 8s.
Right.
So
and you couldn't.
It's a question that's on their mind.
Even if you wanted to, you couldn't buy them right now because they've been sold out for.
Yeah, I know. I just ordered all my filters last week, and they already told me it was going to be delayed, and those are only 8s.
Right.
But they're just so busy. But I'm just saying, people are aware of the number that was put out by the Department of Health when all this started. I mean, we can't just stick MERV 13s in our system. So.
Right. No, the system won't handle it.
It'll shut down.
Right.
So, that was one of the questions that was asked. So I'm sure they're not going to forget. That's all I'm saying. It's just.
Well, all the new equipment will certainly have MERV 13s just because it's a standard and it's actually required by chips.
Okay, that's the question I had, because I'm going to get asked that question. Okay.
But just so everybody knows, that's really for more of a recirculation system. So as the system's recirculating air from the room,
right,
it's capturing. MERV 13 obviously is more efficient than a MERV 8. So
MERV
it-
8s don't even get dirty.
what's that?
MERV 8s don't even get dirty.
Yeah. So the MERV 13s will be a part of the new equipment.
Okay.
It's just that it doesn't really make a difference if you're bringing in 100% outside air, that you're not capturing the particulates that are in the air in the space, because that's all being exhausted.
Yeah, you could explain that to them and they would just say, we still want MERV 13s.
Right. Which
Yeah,
which they'll get. Which they'll have.
So that's all I want to tell them.
they'll have that, but you know, pretty much all of the guidelines and protocols for COVID, the best solution, the best way to address it is to introduce fresh air. And that's what we're doing.
I know, but it's not what they think.
Right, the
Let me just-
existing
let me just ask on the-
systems.
Let me just ask another question on the filters. There will be rough filtration on the incoming air, correct? Rough. I'm not talking, MERV, but rough.
No, the incoming air will also have MERV 13s as well.
It will, okay.
Is
But
Bob-
unnecessarily so, basically, is what you're saying.
Right. I mean, it's fresh air. You're really trying to grab the pollen.
Correct. Yeah, that's why I
oh.
meant rough, all you really need is rough filtration on the incoming air.
Agreed. Yeah.
I mean, I worked in a plant where they decided filtration wasn't necessary and they had a snowstorm in the plant because they were just drawing in the snow from outside.
Right. No, we have it'll have filtration on the intake side as well as on the exhaust side, just to protect the unit itself.
Okay.
But it also clean that outside air. And it'll have a MERV 13 because that's the requirements of chips.
Louis. Hello?
Yes, Bob.
Bob.
Yes. All right. So just listening to that discussion, a couple of things. So Dave, did you get the drawings from Warner? Is that where we
Yes,
got the
well,
original?
Lewis, yes.
All right. That's excellent, Lou. Thank you for that.
It wasn't easy.
No, I know, but we're gonna have to work with Steve and with the district to get our hands on that stuff too. So that's one. So thank you for that. Two, with the COVID, the ionization or any sort of COVID filtration, what is RIDE saying on that? And then third, I know that Steve Smith from Downs is on the line, and Dylan from Steve Turner. And so these are elements, are these pieces of equipment, or I'm just looking at supply chain and schedule impact of anything like that. So that's my observation on those.
Well, I can chime in with regard to RIDE. I think RIDE's going to be happy with the ERVs that we're proposing for two reasons. A is that it's 100% outside air in and 100% exhaust air out. There's no recirculation.
Right.
So
Given that, then there's no need for any filtration.
right. I mean, outside air is going to be necessarily free of any infectious aerosols.
Right.
So
All we really need then are rough filters coming in, and that's it.
right. Most of the other COVID measures are installed in recirculating systems.
Right.
I
Want you guys to know that. Make sure you're clear.
The other, I don't know if you guys are using HEPA filters in the classroom now. I know that some districts receive them from the state, and
We have them in every classroom.
yeah. So if you've got HEPA filters in every classroom, and that's really what in a lot of districts that's the thing. It's like HEPA filters are just as good as outside air. So if you've got an older system without outside air and you don't have the ability to recirculate the air and put in these other things, HEPA filtered air is just as good as outside air, because HEPAs are even finer than a MERV 13. They
Yep.
pull out they can remove 100% of the viruses.
Right.
So if you're using those, in addition to, I mean, I would say you probably don't need them after you put in the new ERVs, but if you keep them in there, there's really you can't really do much better than that, honestly. We've looked at, the only other option is installing permanent HEPA filters in the ceiling. And that's an extremely expensive proposition that, it's difficult to justify, not because it's not good for cleaning the air, but it's a difficult proposition because, it's a big investment and, it's hard to predict how much longer HEPAs are going to be required, to deal with the situation as it changes and modifies with, vaccinations and things like that.
And I can tell you, to wondering how RIDE will react to this. We've gone through this exact scenario with other districts in them. They approved a district not doing anything because they were using the HEPA filters in each one of the classrooms. So we're way beyond that here. It's an ideal situation, and I know that RIDE will recognize that.
Yeah, I agree.
I had another question. I'm assuming that all of the areas marked out of scope on the drawings that Bob circulated are out of scope because they don't need to be replaced by now. So I'm just kind of confirming, I guess, that, like, for instance, the whole dining area, kitchen, etc., all those systems are fine and we don't need to touch them at this point and don't expect to need to touch them in the near future?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, the only thing the only modification I would make to that is the kitchen is getting a new makeup air unit because the makeup air unit is up on the roof. That's one of the rooftop pieces of equipment, but we're not changing any equipment within that area. In the dining area, the heating and ventilating units, again, are so far in good condition, and we expect that they'd be viable for quite a few years, just like the locker rooms and the gym areas. So we're just trying to keep those outside of the scope for now until we get a good handle on the pricing for what we're proposing.
Yeah, and if we are able to incorporate them, great. But just to back up a little bit, during the stage 2 review comments, RIDE was concerned about the auditorium. They had us further investigate that. We engaged a theatrical consultant, but also an acoustical consultant who identified the kitchen as the problem with the sound, mechanical sound in the auditorium. He has been engaged in this phase. We have met with them twice out on the site, and those noise concerns that were identified are being addressed.
They weren't actually in the auditorium, the problems. The problem was.
No, they were, but they go through the auditorium, and so
Right.
that's why they
Yeah,
made.
because he had said the auditorium was fine, but the sound outside the auditorium going.
Yeah.
through. Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure I understood what he had said.
Yes.
Okay.
Louis, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So HVAC is not my area of expertise. And this is probably going to be an oversimplified question, but the rooftop units are replaced. Eventually, heating gets down into the classrooms. So something happens between the rooftop and then the end point in each classroom. That means that it's going through all kinds of pipes and whatever else makes up the system. Has there been any look at what is between the rooftop unit and the end point of where this heat comes out? And is there any concern about areas that we should be looking at, areas that could be a pressure point for added costs? I'm just curious about that conversation.
Yeah, that's a good question. Will, can you handle that? Can you answer that?
Sure. So all of the moving parts and the heat generation and or cooling generation and the fans and everything that creates your HVAC is on the roof. There's no equipment in the ductwork. That basically you've got your rooftop equipment, and then that blows the conditioned air through existing ductwork that travels through the building. These are just, for lack of a better term, large pipes with outlets in each room. So there's really nothing to fail on those. It's a static piece of pipe. So, we have looked at them. We have, reviewed the sizing on the plans, reviewed other things. We're not aware of any issues with that existing ductwork. So right now, in general, what we're trying to do is maintain that, because when we start affecting that ductwork, we start affecting ceilings and other issues within the building that start to become a big source of expense.
Well, that's what I was concerned about.
Yeah, so we have addressed all of those. You may be referring or maybe thinking of, there are some classrooms that have units at the ceiling of the classrooms that are like fan coil units. That was a big concern for our acoustical consultant, because Wright mostly cares about the sound in the classrooms. And so those units are being replaced, new units provided outside of the teaching space.
Okay.
And then also, if I could add, there is some ductwork modification. Will, if you could just touch a little bit, just expand on that for a minute.
Well, what we need to do is part of the CHIPS protocol and energy conservation and things of that nature. In each classroom, we will have to add a what we call a VAV box. It's basically a control box that can vary the amount of airflow that's provided into each classroom. We need to provide that so that when a classroom is empty, we're not dumping a bunch of conditioned outside air in there to no good. So in each classroom, we will be installing VAV boxes to address the demand control ventilation in each space.
How about exhaust?
Exhaust. Well, there are some exhaust systems that will remain, for example, in science rooms and things of that nature. But in general, the return from the HMV units will be brought back to the ERV so that we can scavenge that heat from the air and bring that into the outside air.
Are there some classrooms that were deficient in the return air, and so we're adding ductwork for that?
There may be some, and in general, that's not
Blocking it off.
not a big issue, but there may be a few where we had to modify it a little bit.
And so for those modifications, we've also picked up what ceilings need to be removed and reinstalled to allow for that work to come. So that's all being coordinated into our documents.
Right, and those unit ventilators that are coming out, mostly those are serving interior classrooms. We will be, we'll obviously have to do some work to remove those units and adapt the ductwork to the new equipment.
Replace that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like between 204 and 206 is where you're probably thinking about, Jim, between that Searle's room and the room next to it.
Yeah, and I also know that we have a couple of classrooms where we really get no heat. Am I right?
That's between 204 and 206.
So
that's one of the things they're gonna remove and
Okay.
replace.
All right.
That's what he's saying.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Yeah, I just didn't know the numbers, but I
Yeah,
knew-
it's that and the ones below.
Will, Bob Ross here. What's the experience when you get in, so you move in existing maybe putting in new ductwork to where the existing, to fill in the gap from the piece that you removed, right? What's the inside of that ductwork look like? So in other words, I'm concerned with, we're doing all this work, and I know that we're just generally pushing air through a 6 to maybe 24-inch round pipe, ductwork. But,
Right.
as far as the overall air quality, because that's going to be part of it. We've all been on those tours where they look at the vents coming into the classroom, and there's, soot, what looks like soot, it's dust, it's whatever.
Dust
And-
bunnies, yep.
And I just want to make sure that if there is an opportunity to do our due diligence to ensure that we answer that question, is that part of CHIPS or a ride, or, where do we hang our hat on that?
Well, what we call for is a full duct cleaning of all the existing ductwork by a professional duct cleaning contractor. So, what you have here, luckily, is all metal ductwork. We just got done with this, or we're just dealing with a school that turned out they had duct board, which is just fiberglass insulation formed into ducts, which is not good. It tends to break down. What you've got here is metallic ductwork, so that's easily cleaned. They have robots they can send down the ductwork and clean that all out and get it as clean as it was when it was installed.
And we're carrying that as a cost in the project already?
Absolutely.
You're a good man, Will. When they said you were the best, I was like, are they just messing with me?
Come on, Bob, I want to go to bed.
That's excellent. Yeah, you and me both.
Well, let's get this thing moving.
I have one more question. Some of the baseboard heat has recirculator pumps. Are those covered?
Right now, we're not planning on replacing any of the pumps. That wasn't something that we were aware of. Steve, do you have issues with any of the?
No, we've replaced the big circulators recently. We've just done those 2 big ones in the boiler room, and anything else is something we'll do on a normal routine. So it's not.
We are replacing all the control valves and getting those onto the control system.
And the ones in the hallway too, right? The control valves on those.
Yep.
So Lou, in terms of submitting a stage 3 application, which is what we're working on right now, right? Can you tell me about the process for how we are checking to make sure that we're on budget, or are we over budget? Like, we've done a lot of investigation, a lot of analysis. We don't have to spend the $175,000 up on top of the roofs because of the fact that we don't have to do any adjustments, right? As was explained to us. So that's a savings.
Structure's fine.
Where are we now?
So giving the really expedited schedule that we're working on, we want to get schematic design in. Given that our project was cost estimated not long ago, right? We really worked with all this in November, December. We're submitting the schematic design estimate as part of this package.
Okay.
We're also currently preparing a whole new set of new estimates. So our cost estimator, independent professional cost estimator, is re-estimating everything to the latest drawings, the more defined drawings. And so there'll be 3 submittals. Schematic design, which we'll do tomorrow. Once we get that approved, we're rolling to be able to submit design development right away, as soon as we get those prices back. And then the other one is 60% construction documents. So those are the three stages. We will verify the cost and the status of the project at each one of those.
Okay. But so
Without-
far, we've not uncovered anything that was like, that we just didn't predict. We haven't-
No. The other way, it's the other way.
Yeah, good.
You know, we hadn't, because not knowing what we didn't know,
Sure.
there was allowances carried for structural reinforcing.
Okay.
Which, Dave, I know that you have other issues to deal with, Dave. So thank you for participating, but we're all set with you, Dave O'Day.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, then I wanted, there's a couple of times that we've talked a little bit about chips for some of the committee members that may not be familiar with this. New England chips is kind of like a LEED certification that RIDE requires us to follow. It's different in LEED. It's like a silver certification, but it's different than LEED because it is specific to the region where the project takes place. That's why New England chips is the name of it. And then it's specific for schools. So they deal a lot with sound and other things that you typically don't. So that's the standard that we're following for all of these designs.
Louis, I'm just going to interrupt for a second. There's a lot of good discussion, and I hate to cut it off, but I was wondering if we should move on to some approvals, because I only have a few more minutes before I'm going to have to jump off of this.
Sure, I think we've covered all of it, really.
Okay. All right, so Bob, in the approvals section of the agenda, are we ready to award the OPM, the commissioning agent, et cetera?
Yes, we're ready to move forward on A, B, and C. Well, C, I think, based on the discussion.
All right, well, let's get A and B done.
Yep.
Is there a motion to award the OPM to Downs Construction?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those against? Motion passes. Is there a motion to award the commissioning agent to, is it Stephen Turner, Inc. for Stage 3 and Stage 4?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those against? Motion passes. All right, Bob, as far as C goes, that's what we've been talking about all night. Is there any further discussion that we need to have about the schematic design approval?
I'm not aware of any other than what we've carried on tonight, so.
All right.
I'm good.
What RIDE is looking for is exactly what we went through for us to communicate what's in the project, what's not in the project, and for you to approve the submittal of that schematic design package.
Okay, if no one else in the committee has any other questions or discussion they'd like to have, I'll entertain a motion to approve the Stage 3 submittal to RIDE.
I'd make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
I do want to jump back in the agenda to the update on the project status. Bob, could you tell everybody what's occurred since the last time we met?
So, yes, I can. So on the political front, the legislative front, the enabling it legislation was enacted. It was approved by the governor, made effective. It is going to meet the deadline to be on the same ballot as the all-day referendum for the school committee budget. The bond counsel, Karen Grande at Lockport, has given us the language for the bond referendum that will appear on the ballot. That has been given to the superintendent, who has forwarded that to Robin to create the ballot. So that's all very, very positive news as far as what happened.
We've created the ballot and approved it for distribution to the boards of canvassers already. So we've hit that deadline as well.
So that's really good. The MOA that the school committee signed, and I know we have a couple of school committee members on that were signatories. There's actually a second document, so it was a little confusing when they sent that. But there's an MOA for the pay-go, and embedded in the pay-go is the whole project of 17.8 million. We signed on that document. In working with RIDE today, there's actually another standalone document that just is the 17.8 necessity of construction, which I need to get signatures for. They're aware. They know that we've got all the support in the communities. It's just kind of a perfunctory duty that we have to get to satisfy one of their requirements. So that's all. That I'm gonna have to send a message out to everybody to get signing on that. So that's real good. And I think, you know, we're continuing to hit our marks. I'm anxious to get to the next level. I think Steve Smith from Downs, I don't know if you guys are at a place yet where you can provide a schedule, and we can either, you can address that now or later. And then the other part is the Procore software that would be available to folks so that we can live track what's going on with the project on an app, the app Procure.
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, Bob. So we are currently working the schedule to have it ready early tomorrow morning for part of this stage 3 submittal, and then work on some more detail after that. And I'm sorry. I didn't know if someone had a question. And then, yes, we can get Procore active for the team's use in the very near future. And just for anybody who isn't aware, obviously, Bob, and you can see my name here, Steve Smith with the OPM with Downs Construction. And also on the call is Joe DeSanti as well. He's our director. So we're looking very forward to moving along on the job and working with the team in the building committee.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
And just one other thing that I've been thinking about. So it's not a specific item on the agenda, but now that we are where we are and we know that the town vote is in April and it's basically March, we have about a month to make sure that we get the right information out to the community so that people go to the polls and vote in favor of this.
Yes,
I mean, that's
absolutely.
like the next month is really important. So I don't know. I mean, obviously I'll be involved in that, but if there's anybody that has ideas and discussion and things that we need to be doing, I'm all ears.
I think one of the things that parents are going to know about are those COVID modifications that are being made. I noticed in the initial cost summary from November 20 or November 4th, it says in the breakdown of cost, COVID requirements included in the base estimate around 550,000. I think if we have a breakdown of what those specific safeguards are, that's going to garner a lot of backing for this project.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yep. So Louis, maybe we can, like in the really quick near future, get some more specific information about what's included and how it will address COVID, because that is something that is on the minds of our parents who have children in school, and that could be a good leverage point for us to use, take advantage of.
Sure. Give us a couple of days and we'll get that to you.
That'd be great.
So I'm wondering if the focus should be, you're kind of getting, if I understand Will correctly, the best possible system. You're bringing in 100% outside air and exhausting 100% of air. So no recirculation of anything. So that, to me, that would be the focus. That if I were, and I am a parent, but if I was a parent in that area, that would be great news to hear.
Well, you also should stress the fact that you are recycling the energy, so you're getting a big energy reduction.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, that 60 to 70% energy cost estimate is huge. I mean,
Yeah, so any of those key talking points that Louis, you feel, or Andrea, from your perspective, any of you that feel like we need to highlight that in the messaging that goes out.
75 cents on the dollar from the state.
Yeah, that I know about. So obviously we have to get some work done relatively quickly on that. And
and so maybe if we could just have a meeting with Downs. I know they're really good at identifying and marketing this stuff.
I would be really happy with that.
Yeah, so we'll coordinate that. And also, Dylan is with us from Stephen Turner. He has, you folks know him. They have been the commissioning agent on many of the projects and have done a great job. So, we welcome him also to our team.
Thanks, Louis. Hey, Louis, just to follow up, Louis, this is, thank you, Louis. It's Joe DeSanti from Downs.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. We have done a lot of support with this type of information in the past. So I think Louis is absolutely correct. The follow-up meeting, and we could provide some insight and some things that have worked and not worked in the past. But I think you guys have got a good narrative started already.
Yeah, I would appreciate the support. I really appreciate it. Thank you for that.
Hey guys, I've got to jump off. You're welcome to keep chatting about these last few items, but I got to sign off.
I'll close the meeting, James. Have a good one.
Have a good night.
All right, thanks. Bye. Good night.
I don't have the agenda in front of me, but what else is on it?
Meeting dates and adjourn, unless there's any other discussion.
Go up to the next guest.
I'm going to.
I think we're good.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Mike's all over that.
All those in favor?
I just like to close with one point, that my nephew Travis really works for EDS. It's not that the EDS staff refers to me as Uncle Lou.
So should we refer to you as Uncle Lou?
You gotta go work for EDS.
Oh, okay.
Godfather Lou.
Have a good night, everybody. Take care.
Good night.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Hey, Bob.
Yes.
So,
Hello.
yeah, I think I hope I wasn't out of line by bringing that question up, but I'm